Unit 1. Diversity in the living world. Biology is the science of life forms and living processes. The living world comprises an amazing diversity of living organisms. Early men could easily perceive the difference between inanimate matter and the living organisms. Early men defined some of the inanimate matter such as wind, sea, fire, etc., and some among the animals and plants. A common feature of all such life forms of inanimate and animate objects was the sense of fear that they evoke. The description of living organisms, including human beings, began much later in human history. Societies which indulged in anthropogenic view of biology could register limited progress in biological knowledge. Systematic and monumental description of life forms brought in, out of necessity, detailed systems of identification, nomenclature, and classification. The biggest spin-off of such studies was the recognition of sharing of similarities among living organisms both horizontally and vertically. That all present-day living organisms was related to each other and also to all organisms that ever lived on this earth was a revelation which humbled man and led to cultural movements for conservation and biodiversity. In the following chapters of this unit, you will get a description including classification of all plants from taxonomist perspective. Chapter 1. The Living World. How wonderful is the living world? The wide range of living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitats in which we find living organisms, be it in cold mountains, deciduous forests, oceans, freshwater lakes, deserts, or hot springs, leaves us speechless. The beauty of galloping horses, of migrating birds, the valley of flowers, or the attacking sharks evokes awe or a deep sense of wonder. The ecological conflict and cooperation among the member of population and among the populations of a community or even the molecular traffic inside the cell makes us deeply reflect on what indeed is life. The question has two implicit questions within it. The first is technical one that seeks to answer what living is as opposed to non-living, and the second one is a philosophical one which seeks to answer what the purpose of life is. As scientists, we shall not attempt answering the second question. We will try to reflect on what is living. 1.1. Diversity in the living world. If you look around, you will see a large variety of living organisms, be it in potted plants, insects, birds, your pets, or other animals and plants. There are also several organisms that you cannot see with your naked eye, but they all are around you. If you were to increase the area that you make observations in, the range and the variety of organisms that you see would increase. Obviously, if you were to visit a dense forest, you would probably see a much greater number and kinds of living organisms in it. Each different kind of plant, animal, or organism that you see represents a species. The number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 millions. This refers to biodiversity or the number and the type of organisms present on Earth. We should remember here that as we explore new areas and even old ones, the new organisms are continuously being identified. As stated earlier, there are millions of plants and animals in the world. We know the plants and animals in our own area by their local names. Probably you would recognize the confusion that would be created if we did not find ways and means to talk to each other to refer organisms we are talking about. Hence, there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms such that a particular living organism is known by same name all over the world. The process is called nomenclature. Obviously, nomenclature or naming is only possible when the organisms is described correctly and we know that what the organism name is attached to. This is called identification. In order to facilitate the study of scientists established a procedure to assign scientific name to each known organisms. This is acceptable to biologists all over the world. For plants, scientific names are based on agreed principle and criteria which is provided by International Code of Botanical Nomenclature ICBN. You may ask, how are animals named? Animal taxonomists have evolved International Code of Geological Nomenclature ICZN. Scientific name ensures that each organism has only one name. Description of any organism should enable the people in any part of the world to arrive at the same name. They also ensure that such name has not been used for any other known organisms. Biologists follow universally accepted principles to provide scientific names to known organisms. Each name has two components, the generic name and the specific epithet. System of providing name with two components is called binomial nomenclature. The naming system given by Carolus Linnaeus is practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system using a two-word format was found convenient. Let us take an example of mango to understand the way of providing scientific names better. The scientific name of mango is written by Mangifera indica. Let us see how the botanical name is. In this name, Mangifera represents the genus while Indica represents the particular species or a specific epithet. Other universal rules of nomenclature are as follows. Number 1. Biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. Are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. Number 2. The first word of biological name represents the genus while the second component denotes the specific epithet. 3. Both the words in biological name when handwritten are specifically underlined or printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. Number 4. The first one denoting the genus starts with a capital letter while the specific epithet starts with small letter. It can be illustrated with the example of Mangifera indica. The name of the author appears after the specific epithet, that is, at the end of biological name, and is written with an abbreviated form. Example, Mangifera indica Lin. It indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. Since it is nearly impossible to study all living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is called classification. Classification is a process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters. For example, we can easily recognize groups such as plants or animals or dogs or cats or insects. The moment we used any of these terms, we associate certain characters with the organisms in that group. What image do you see when you think of a dog? Obviously, each one of us will see dogs, not cats. Now, if we were to think of Alsatians, we know what we are talking about. Similarly, suppose we were to say mammals, you could of course think of animals with external ears and body hairs. Likewise, in plants, if you try to talk about wheat, the picture of wheat in each of our minds will see of wheat plants, not of rice or any other plant. Hence, all these dogs, cats, mammals, wheats, rice, plants, animals, etc. are convenient categories we use to study organisms. The scientific term for these categories is called taxa. Here you must recognize that taxa can indicate categories at very different level. Plants are also form of taxa. Wheat is also a taxa. Similarly, animals, mammals, dogs, all are taxa. But you know that dog is a mammal and mammals are animals. Therefore, animals, mammals, dogs represent taxa at different levels. Hence, based on characteristic, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. The process of classification is called taxonomy. External and internal structures, along with the structure of cell development process and ecological information of organisms, are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. Hence, characterizations, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the process that are basic to taxonomy. Taxonomy is not something new. Human beings have always been interested in knowing more and more about the various kind of organisms, particularly with reference to their own use. In early days, human beings needed to find sources for their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. Hence, the earliest classification were based on uses of various organisms. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more and more about different kind of organisms and their diversity, but also relationships among them. The branch of study which refers to systematics. The word systematics is derived from Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of organisms. Linnaeus used Systema Naturae as the title of this publication. The scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. Systematics takes into account evolutionary relationships between organisms. 1.2 Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called as taxonomic category, and all categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Each category represents to as unit of classification, in fact represents a rank and is commonly known as taxon, which is plural of taxa. Taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represent a group of organisms sharing common features like 3 pairs of joint legs. It means insects are recognizable concrete objects which can be classified, and thus they were given a rank or category. Can you name other such groups of organisms? Remember, groups represents a category. Category further denotes a rank. Each rank or taxon in fact represents a unit of classification. These taxonomic groups or categories are distinct biological entities and not merely morphological aggregate. Taxonomic studies of all known organisms led to the development of common categories such as kingdom, phylum, or division, class, order, family, genus, and species. All organisms, including those in plant and animal kingdoms, have species as the lowest category. Now the question you may ask is how to place an organism in various categories. The basic requirement is the knowledge or characters of individual or group of organisms. This helps in identifying similarities and dissimilarities among the individuals or same kind of organisms as well as of other kind of organisms. 1.2.1 Species. Taxonomic studies consider a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as a species. One should be able to distinguish one species from the other closely related species based on the distinct morphological differences. Let us consider Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum or potato, and Panthera leo or lion. All the three names, indica, tuberosum, and leo, represents the specific epithets, while the first word Mangifera, Solanum, and Panthera are genera and represents higher level of taxon or category. Each genus may have one or more than one specific epithets representing different organisms but having morphological similarities. For example, Panthera has another specific epithet called tigris, and Solanum has another specific epithet like nigrum and melogena. Human being belongs to a species called sapiens, which is grouped into genus Homo. The scientific name thus for the human being is written as Homo sapiens. 1.2.2 Genus. Genus comprises a group of related species which has more characters in common in comparison to species of another genera. We can say that genera are aggregates of common closely related species. For example, potato and brinjal are two different species but both belongs to the same genus Solanum. Lion, Panthera leo, leopard, Panthera pardus, and tiger with several common features are all species of genus Panthera. This genus differs from another genus Felis, which includes cats. 1.2.3 Family. The next category, family, has a group of related genera with still less number of similarities as compared to genus and species. Families are characterized on the basis of both vegetative and reproductive features of plant species. Among plants, for example, three different genera, Solanum, Petunia, and Datura, are placed in family Solanaceae. Among animals, for example, Panthera comprising lion, tiger, leopard is put along with genus Felis in family Felidae. Similarly, if you observe the features of cat and a dog, you will find some similarities and some differences as well. They are separated in two different families, Felidae and Canidae respectively. 1.2.4 Order. You have seen earlier that categories like species, genus, and families are based on the number of similar characters. Generally, order and other higher taxonomic categories are identified based on the aggregates of character. Order, being a higher category, is assemblies of family which exhibit a few similar characters. The similar characters are less in numbers as compared to different genera included in a family. Plant families like Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae are included in order polynomials mainly based on floral characters. The animal order Carnivora, including families like Felidae and Canidae. 1.2.5 Class. The category includes related orders. For example, order Primata comprising monkey, gorilla, gibbon is placed in class Mammalia along with order Carnivora that includes animals like tiger, cat, and dog. Class Mammalia has other orders also. 1.2.6 Phylum. Classes comprising animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds along with mammals constitute the next higher category called phylum. All these based on common features like presence of notochord and dorsal hollow neural system are included in phylum Chordata. In case of plants, classes with a few similar characters are assigned to a higher category called division. 1.2.7 Kingdom. All the animals belonging to various phyla are assigned to the highest category called Kingdom Animalia in the classification system of animals. The Kingdom Plantae, on the other hand, is distinct and comprises all animals from various divisions. Henceforth, we refer as animals and plant kingdoms. The taxonomic category from species to kingdom has been shown in ascending order, starting with species in figure 1.1. These are broad categories. However, taxonomists have also developed subcategory in the hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placement of various taxa. Look at hierarchy in figure 1.1. Can you recall the basis of arrangement? Say, for example, as we go higher from species to kingdom, the number of common characteristics goes on decreasing. Lower the taxa, more the characteristics that are members within the taxon share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty to determining the relationship to other taxa at the same level. Hence, the problem of classification becomes more complex. Table 1.1 indicates the taxonomic categories to which some common organisms like housefly, man, mango, and wheat belong. Summary: the living world is rich in diversity. Millions of plant and animals has been identified and described, but a large number still remains unknown. The varied range of organisms in terms, size, colors, habitat, physiological and morphological features make us seek the defining characteristic of living organisms. In order to facilitate the study of kinds and diversity of organisms, biologists have evolved certain rules and principles for identification, nomenclature, and classification of organisms. The branch of knowledge dealing with these aspects is referred to as taxonomy. The taxonomic studies of various species of plants and animals are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general for knowing our biological resources and their diversity. The basics of taxonomy like identification, naming, and classification of organisms are universally evolved under international codes. Based on the resemblances and distinct differences, each organism is identified and assigned a correct scientific or biological name comprising two words as per binomial system of nomenclature. An organism represents or occupies a place or position in system of classification. There are many categories, ranks, and are generally referred to as taxonomic categories or taxa. All the categories constitute a taxonomical hierarchy.